Hello, friends. After hearing today's paranormal story, you will be shocked. This is the story of a spirit that appears to people and scares them, but does not harm them. Anyone who tries to live in its house gets scared away. The name of the spirit was Sallie. Her body was half rotten, and there were worms crawling on her face. This house wasn't haunted from the beginning. It was built in 1871. In December 1992, Tony Pickman and his wife, Deborah Pickman, bought the house. They had recently married and moved into this house. They even selected a room for their future baby and decorated it lovingly. The house was very dear to them because it was the first house they bought with their hard-earned money. They had a dog that always acted strangely in the room they had prepared for their baby. However, Tony and Deborah ignored the dog's behavior, thinking it was just unsettled in the new house. The dog was actually trying to warn them about the impending danger. The Pickmans had been living in the house for about a year when they began to notice strange occurrences. Lights would turn on suddenly, objects would fall, glass items would break, and at night, they would hear strange noises. They also experienced cold spots in different parts of the house. Tony and Deborah understood that their house was haunted, but since they couldn't afford to move, they decided to stay. They hadn't actually seen the ghost, and they didn't believe in ghosts either. Soon, their baby was born, and they placed the baby in the room where the dog used to bark. Deborah was very troubled by several incidents, one of which was the baby not sleeping at night. Deborah always felt that an invisible spirit was playing with her baby after 2 a.m., preventing the baby from sleeping. One day, Tony went to the baby's room and found toys scattered all over, although their baby was too small to even pick up the toys. Tony thought Deborah might have spread the toys around for the baby to play with, so he gathered them up and placed them properly. But as he was coming down the stairs, he heard the sound of toys being thrown again. When he went back to the room, the toys were once again scattered on the floor. After this incident, Tony discussed it with Deborah, and they decided not to leave their baby alone in that room at night. Tony called his brother, and Deborah called her sister to help take care of the baby. They started keeping the baby with them at night. A week later, their neighbor mentioned that the light in the baby's room turned on at 2 a.m. This worried Tony and Deborah because they never turned on the light in that room at that hour, and no one was staying in that room anymore. They had locked it from outside. After this incident, Tony decided they would leave the house, even if it meant living on the streets. As soon as Tony made this decision, he felt a severe pain in his back. When Deborah lifted his t-shirt, she saw claw marks on his back, as if someone had scratched him vigorously. Seeing this, everyone got scared and immediately fled the house. On July 29, 1993, they brought in a paranormal investigator named Barbara Connor. Since Tony had saved every penny to buy this house, he didn't want to abandon it because of the ghost. Barbara told Tony that there was the spirit of a little girl named Sallie in the house. After hearing this, Tony researched the history of the house and found out that a girl named Sallie had lived and died in that house long ago. It was believed her spirit wandered in the house because she loved it so much. Since Tony and Deborah hadn't seen Sallie's terrifying face or her powers yet, they thought they could manage living with the spirit of a little girl. But this was a grave mistake. They moved back into the house, knowing that Sallie lived there. About a month later, a man visited Tony and told him he had lived in that house 5 years earlier. He had a little daughter who had an imaginary friend in the house, and they too had experienced strange events, prompting them to leave the house. The man's daughter had drawn a picture of her imaginary friend, showing a little girl in a white gown. Tony kept this picture despite the man's warning. That night, after 3 a.m., Tony went to the kitchen to get water and saw Sallie behind him. She was half transparent, and Tony could see the wall clearly through her. Since Sallie didn't harm him, Tony ignored her and went back to bed, telling Deborah about the incident the next morning. After this, Sallie's appearances became common, but the family didn't fear her, which was quite an insult to the ghost. But about a month and a half later, Sallie showed her spirit power. One night, Tony woke up and saw Sallie in front of him. This time, she grabbed his legs and started pulling him towards her. The room was freezing cold, and wherever Sallie touched Tony's body, it went numb. She was very powerful, and her half-rotten face with worms crawling on it made her look horrifying. part human and part beast. Tony somehow escaped and fled the house. After this, the entire family left the house and began to take ghosts seriously. The house still stands abandoned today, and no one dares to live there again. Many paranormal investigators visit the house and have felt the presence of a spirit, but no one has lived there since the Pickman family. If you have any opinions on why these strange events happened in the house, please share in the comments. And if you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe.